right, you've been watching the House Judiciary Committee debate articles of impeachment that was brought against President Trump, and then you saw them concluding day two with the drop of the gavel right there by Jerry Nadler. Let's bring in Rebecca Kaplan. She's been standing by, and she's a CBS News Capitol Hill producer. There was some kind of a tiff going on back and forth right there. Rebecca, what could you tell us and exactly what happened? The vote was on the committee took was a procedural vote. Can you explain all of that?
Yes, let me tell you what just happened, because this was not the end that any of us were expecting to today. So the way the committee works, they do the debate on what's called this amendment in the nature of a substitute. I know I'm getting very technical right now. It's a procedural maneuver that kind of defines how debate works in the committee. It's not the actual article text, but it mimics it precisely. So what happens is they'll pass that amendment in the nature of the substitute, sort of the working document that they are working in, before moving to a final passage vote on these two articles of impeachment. We were expecting that they would take three final votes tonight. This first procedural vote, followed by Article 1, the abuse of power charge, and then Article 2, the obstruction of Congress charge. But at the very last minute, Chairman Nadler said they were just going to do the single procedural vote tonight, and instead they are pushing the two article of impeachment votes to Friday morning at 10 a.m. Now, Republicans found out literally as Nadler was announcing this from the dais tonight. They had no idea it was going to happen, and you heard Ranking Member Collins right there. He was not happy to hear that Republicans were not consulted on this move. It came after the committee had spent more than 12 hours in that room today debating the articles of impeachment, in addition to 3.5 hours last night making opening statements. So this was really a surprise that no one saw coming.
I believe Ranking Member Collins even called it a kangaroo court. Let's bring in Zeke Miller. He's also with us. He's on the phone. He's a CBSN political contributor and White House correspondent for the Associated Press. What kind of spin will the White House be saying about exactly what occurred just now?
Okay.
Well, the White House is going to argue that all these proceedings were inevitable in terms of the actual final outcome of the vote in this slow procedural march toward impeachment, likely of the president coming next week. But in terms of the actual proceedings, this parliamentary procedures, they're going to hold us up with another example of sort of congressional dysfunction and confusion, and we'll likely hear them echo some of the rhetoric, as we just heard from some of those Republican lawmakers, like that it's a kangaroo court, or this is just another example of Democrats running these committees by fiat of the majority here and doing things the way they want to without consulting the minority.
So tomorrow it'll be 10 o'clock where they will then convene again, and will they then vote on the articles of impeachment tomorrow? Will they get to it tomorrow? Zeke?
Well, it seems it seems that that is possible in that committee, and then I'll set it up for the full House later next week, sometime next week. But that is the expectation. This is obviously a bit of a surprise tonight, so the reason for this delay and all of that, that is the expectation. It would be kind of very surprising if this committee doesn't send it to the full House.
All right, Zeke, hold on right there. I need to interrupt you because Republican lawmakers are on the microphone right now. We're going to listen to them right now.
Their very paper-thin impeachment process for over 12 to 14 hours was enough. So tonight, without consulting the ranking member, without consulting anyone, schedules of anybody be put out there. We're scheduling this at 10 a.m. in the morning. I don't know. The integrity level of this committee has been, the chairman's integrity is gone. His staff is gone. This was the most Bush League thing I have seen forever. And if the American people wondered about this impeachment anymore, they don't have to wonder anymore. They saw what happened right here tonight, because this committee is more concerned about getting it on TV in the morning than it was finishing its job tonight and letting the members go home. Words cannot describe how inappropriate this was, how I have been saying for the whole year how this committee is just simply rum-shotting the rules of this House, and this proves it tonight. They do not care about rules. They have one thing, their hatred of Donald Trump, and this showed it tonight because they want to shine into these cameras, get prettied up, and then vote and make it all happen. This was the most, I'm just beyond words at this point, but it shows their lack of integrity in this process and the lack of case that they have. For them to actually come out here to defend this is the most ludicrous thing I've ever seen in my life.
Why does it really matter if you vote tonight or tomorrow? I mean, Jim Sensenbrenner, the former chair of this committee, complimented Chairman Nadler for how he conducted this markup.
I don't think Jim Sensenbrenner would compliment him right now, as Jim Sensenbrenner left pretty frustrated tonight. The reason we have this tonight is we had worked this out tonight to finish up tonight. So we have members who have flights. We have members who are getting on trains. We have members who are going home because this was going to finish up tonight. But to not even consult the ranking member, to not even give us a heads up, this was all we heard. And we had been consulting back and forth in that last few minutes about who was going to speak and how we were going to end the speaking tonight, so that we had plenty of more amendments and other things we could have offered tonight and been here all night. But we chose to say, we've said all we need to say, they've said all they need to say, and we're finishing this up. That was the most lack of integrity thing I've ever seen by a member of Congress, and especially a chairman.
Do you have members who are supposed to be on this Codell tomorrow?
I have no idea.
Mr. Collins, just to clarify, before Mr. Nadler announced it, you had gotten no word in any way about it?
I think that my expression right now would confirm that. That was the most shot. And then to see them and then the staff and the chairman have no comment and just sort of go, huh? This is the problem. This is why people don't like us. This crap like this is why people are having such a terrible opinion of Congress. What Chairman Nadler just did and his staff and the rest of the majority who sat there quietly and said nothing. This is why they don't like us, because they know it's all about games. They know it's all about these TV screens. It's all about getting at a president because they want the prime time hit. This is Speaker Pelosi and Adam Schiff and the others directing this committee. I don't have a chairman anymore. I guess I just need to go straight to Ms. Pelosi and say, what TV hit does this committee need to do? Because this committee has lost all relevance. I'll see y'all tomorrow.
All right, Rebecca, we just want to bring you into this conversation. You were right there, front and center. And Ranking Member Collins very, very angry, saying that he was completely caught off guard. Your thoughts on this, and what is the mood right now?
As you saw right there, it is very tense up here at the moment. Collins just came to the mics. He's the ranking member, the top Republican on this committee, and called this a Bush League stunt. And what infuriated him the most, he said, was that these members have been sitting there for more than 12 hours today. This seemed like a very last-minute decision, and he said his side was never read in. They were never told that at the very last minute they were going to push this vote until tomorrow. Members had been expecting to do this vote at the end of the night tonight, whether it came in the afternoon or in the middle of the night. They were prepared, and there are members who were going to leave town tomorrow, Friday, because Congress is not supposed to be in session. So this is a really big surprise, a very last-minute change, and clearly there is a lot of sore feelings after what was already a very contentious debate for many, many hours today.
All right, Rebecca, stand by. Also joining me on the phone is Molly Hooper. She's a CBSN political contributor. So, Molly, what can we take away from everything that just happened now?
Well, I just have to go back to what just happened in terms of ending this hearing. I've covered Capitol Hill for 20 years. I've covered the Republicans in the majority. I've covered Democrats in the majority, both parties in the majority. I have never seen a hearing, a markup, end like that, and especially of this magnitude and seriousness without consultation of the minority party. One thing that members on Capitol Hill value, especially if you are considered the minority party, is that you have certain rights, because inevitably each party is going to be in the minority at some point. And to see this kind of hearing end like that was shocking. I'm still kind of taken aback by it. And perhaps Rebecca is, I mean, she's on the ground right now. Maybe Democrats are having some problems with their votes. It doesn't seem like that's happening, but I've only ever seen anything like this when there is a problem with voting and in terms of getting the votes for a certain piece of legislation. But usually that happens in the full House. In any case, my big takeaway from what happened today is pretty much what Tom McClintock, one of the Republicans, said pretty much in the 11th hour tonight. Everybody was making the same talking points and sort of talking past each other. Democrats say they have all the evidence that points to reasons that the president abused power and obstructed Congress. Republicans went right back at him saying, you don't have any facts, and they could litigate this in court and they would win. So really, it just comes down to what happens in the House, and if and when these articles of impeachment go to the full House, likely next week, the House will vote on it. Senate will take it up, and we'll see what happens after that.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now approaching ours.
Hold up, Molly, just really quickly. Rebecca, so why don't we bring you back into the conversation, because Molly did bring up a good point that she had been covering, Capitol Hill for such a long time, and she's never seen anything like this. And the fact that there might not be the votes, is that a possibility?
I don't actually think that's what we're seeing here. I think that Ranking Member Collins might have been onto something when he said that the Democrats wanted to make sure that this vote got the most possible attention. And when it appeared that all the Republican amendments were going to push the vote so late into the evening, when the American people might not be watching, their best option was to wait to hold the final vote in committee on Friday morning instead of doing it at, what are we now, almost 11:30 on Thursday evening. This debate could have gone until 1 a.m. So we could have been looking at a very late vote. The reason I don't think this is an issue of Democrats perhaps not being united is that we just listened to them talk about how solidly behind these articles of impeachment they are and how much of a problem they have with the president's behavior on both the abuse of power and the obstruction of Congress charge for more than 12 hours now. So we know that no one is really faltering. Every single member on that committee has spoken out about why they are in favor of the path that the Democrats have chosen. So I don't think here what we are seeing is Chairman Nadler not having enough votes. I think this is more of an issue of not wanting to take this historic, momentous step. This is only the third time this century that they have done articles of impeachment. I'm sorry, in the last 100 years, not this century. And he just didn't want to have this vote in his committee at 1 o'clock in the morning. Now, he did not explain his reasoning precisely on air, except to say that he wanted people to go home and think about what they had heard for the last 2 days. So that's what he's saying, giving members time to consider this before casting the final vote. And we will see how this all plays out tomorrow morning.
So you're saying it's more of the historic nature of what we're seeing transpire in the wee hours of the morning, and that's why
Absolutely.
A vote tonight wouldn't have the same precedent as a vote tomorrow.
Exactly. It is not every day that you impeach a president. Certainly not something this Congress has done before. Not something as recently as 4 months ago we thought that the Democratic caucus would be doing, because Speaker Pelosi did remain opposed to going down the path of impeachment for much of this year.
I have to imagine that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who's already accused House Democrats of rushing to a vote, is watching this, and now he gets the next 2 steps of what's going to happen in the Senate as he is preparing for his own vote and what's going to happen in the Senate. What do you think Republicans are thinking about right now, especially after Ranking Member Collins and his outcry, calling it a kangaroo court?
This has been an incredibly frustrating process for the Republicans on this committee, and that's because, frankly, in the minority, you really have very little control. Democrats who run the House of Representatives right now, that majority they earned in the 2018 midterm elections, really gives them a lot of power over how they're going to proceed. Had Republicans held on to the House of Representatives, there's no question that this impeachment wouldn't be taking place. So they're very frustrated. They spent this morning, they opened up by talking about their demand for a hearing day for minority witnesses that they have been asking for from the Democrats. Chairman Nadler essentially told them that he was under no obligation to schedule said minority hearing day anytime soon. He could just do it before the end of the next Congress. So they're unhappy about that. They are unhappy about members who were shut out of this process. Republicans on the Judiciary Committee were not pleased that their committee was left out of the investigative process. So there have been a lot of complaints, and frankly, they have to be looking forward to a Senate trial at this point, because the Senate is in Republican hands, as you pointed out. They have much more control over the debate there. And while Senate Democrats do have more power than House Republicans do as the minority in the other chamber, it's still definitely going to be friendlier turf for the president with Republicans in control of that process on the other side of the Capitol.
All right, let's talk about the president. Zeke, what do you think the president is doing? Obviously, he's had quite a day tweeting away as he's watching these proceedings. What do you think he's going to be doing? Have we seen a tweet yet? I haven't.
We have no initial reaction from the president. There was a tweet just 10 or so minutes ago from the president, but not addressing the substance of this blow-up on Capitol Hill. Certainly the message from the president today has been a lot of what we heard from him before, defending his actions, attacking Democrats, retweeting and amplifying some of his allies on Capitol Hill and across the country. A combative tone from the president. But, this is the sort of thing that's going to be seized on by the White House. We've already seen Republicans seize on it as an example of Democrats running this committee and this entire impeachment process. In the words of some Republicans and the president's sort of tyranny of the majority, that they're running this process without input and without giving due process rights to Republicans and to the president. That is a persistent complaint we have heard from the president and his allies over the last month and a half. They said that when the House Intelligence Committee brought in all of the various fact witnesses, the president was not, and his attorneys were not permitted to cross-examine them. That is a theme that we have heard from them. And the message that's being telegraphed from Republicans from the White House is sort of a little bit of, what goes around comes around. And as Rebecca and Molly were alluding to, that, every party, knows that at some point they're going to be in the minority, so that there's always that incentive to be somewhat respectful of minority rights. That, this is now going to move to the Senate, most likely, where Republicans are in control, and Republicans in the White House are looking to how Republicans that were treated in the House, and maybe looking to apply at least some of that in the Senate to the way they will treat Democrats. Obviously, the rules in the Senate are a little bit more rigid and more fixed and fair for both sides. But in terms of the tone and the tenor of these proceedings, certainly there are some Republicans looking to turn the tables on Democrats as things move across the Capitol. Yeah, obviously it's been very contentious. I mean, it's been a very contentious 2 days with everything being sort of divided on party lines. If people are joining in right now and just kind of hearing what the headlines are happening, that it's going to move to 10 a.m. tomorrow, what are the takeaways from the last 2 days, and what could we see play out tomorrow? Certainly, the takeaways is this has been more of the same. This didn't really change anything. None of these, the hearings here did not move the needle for anyone on Capitol Hill, really. Certainly the American public, it was procedural, pro forma. This is the sort of thing that Congress has to do to get these articles of impeachment. Democrats have to do to get those articles of impeachment onto the floor. The math is still the same. These are still likely to pass. The president is all but certain to be impeached next week. For the American people watching at home, after so many weeks of drama-filled testimony of substance, this was 12 hours or so of for the sort of thing that even people who pay attention to the parliamentary substance of these matters, their eyes would glaze over. This is not sort of the made-for-TV moment. That perhaps is why the chairman decided to push this vote into Friday morning, when sort of to contain it, so that there will be those discrete votes to send those articles of impeachment onto the floor of the full Senate, and that way sort of get that made-for-TV moment that Democrats have been looking for as they try to build public support for this impeachment process. All right, Molly, we want to bring you into the conversation. You wanted to clarify something.
Yes, I just want to agree with Rebecca. I don't think that Democrats have lost any support for the articles of impeachment. I just meant that in the past, if we've seen an action like this, like such an abrupt end or anything, it usually had to do with the fact that the party in control may be losing support. But I don't think that's happening here. I think that it definitely was for optics. My speculation is that Jerry Nadler wants this to be seen at 10 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. But the point is, and to go to Zeke's point, it's just that minority rights, that's something that's very important to members in the House. Because, again, both parties are in the minority at some point. And moving forward, especially on a vote like this of such magnitude, we've heard members over the past 2 days equating a vote to impeach with a vote to go to war. That's how serious it is. And in the past, when Bill Clinton was impeached, the Republicans bent over backwards to give the Democrats as many as many witnesses as they needed, the time they needed. They were always in consultation. And even Chuck Schumer at the time, who was a member of the Judiciary Committee, said how fair then Judiciary Chairman Henry Hyde was. So again, that's why if people have been watching for the past 2 days and seeing the Republican indignation, that's why they're very upset probably at this moment. All right.
Rebecca, you get the final question of the night. Let's talk about tomorrow. What are we going to see? It starts again at 10 a.m. Kind of walk us through that.
I think what's really going to happen at this point is that we are going to come in and see them pretty quickly move to a vote on those 2 articles of impeachment. Now, the committee is planning for 2 separate votes. There will be one on the question of abuse of power and a separate vote on the obstruction of Congress charge. So there's going to be those 2 distinct votes tomorrow morning. But that final procedural vote that they took tonight before they left, before Chairman Nadler abruptly announced they were moving the final votes to Friday, that effectively ended all of the debate on these articles of impeachment. So their lawmakers are going to go home. Some of them going to blow off some steam because, as you saw, Republicans are pretty angry about this last-minute turn of events. And then I think that we'll see them walk in here tomorrow at 10 a.m., vote pretty quickly, and then get out of town. Congress was originally supposed to leave today for their whole winter break, and that was delayed by the fact that there's so much end-of-year business happening, not just the impeachment consideration, but also funding the government, a national defense authorization bill, a number of other things, the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. But instead, they are expected to work through next week. However, there's lawmakers who are planning to leave. Some are already going to probably be on planes and trains tomorrow morning and will have to change their travel plans. And then they will all come back the following week for vote in the full House on the articles of impeachment.
All right. Thank you so much, Rebecca Kaplan, for your perspective. Zeke Miller, Molly Hooper, thank you again. And we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back with the rest of the day's news. You're streaming CBSN.